is going to be held electronically to ensure the safety of all residents and staff. All members of the commission and staff are participating from their homes or their offices. For members of the commission, please remember to mute your microphone when you are not speaking and raise your hand if you would like to speak. We will have roll call votes for each motion this evening, as well as for adjournment. I'll ask our staff liaison, Emily Boddicker, to call roll after each motion. I will repeat the motion for record before we vote, and we'll also repeat who made the motion and seconded. Before we begin, there are a few things I'd like to cover for those listening in or watching online. The public has two ways to view the meeting tonight. They can watch the live stream on the city's YouTube channel or listen via phone using the WebEx call-in number. There is no community comment during the meeting tonight. The city is committed to hearing and receiving your input on matters. The public can send in comments to the commission through the commission correspondence web form on our website. The recording of the meeting will also be available to watch on the city's website tomorrow. Go to the Watch a Meeting link under the I Want To tab on the homepage. Thanks in advance for all your patience as we work to conduct this meeting online. We hope there will not be any issues, but be assured that we will do our best to continue the meeting as best we can if there are glitches. So thank you to everyone tuning in tonight for your interest in the Heritage Preservation Commission and our work here in the city. So with that, I will call the meeting to order. Emily, could I please get a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Cundy.
Present.
Commissioner Everson.
Present.
Commissioner Nemo. Commissioner Hassenstab.
Present.
Commissioner Pollock.
Present.
Commissioner Knudsen. Commissioner Longquist.
Present.
Commissioner Woodmeyer. Commissioner Roy.
Present.
Commissioner Maheshwari.
Present.
And Chair Schilling.
Present. Thank you, Emily.
And then Annie, I don't want to interrupt, but I just wanted to see if Robert was on the line. I think he might be our call-in user, but I wanted to check. So Robert, if you can hear us, is that you? Maybe not, so we'll leave it.
I also do see that Commissioner Woodmeyer has joined us.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes. Okay, first on our agenda is approval of the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Was that Commissioner Nemo? Okay, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Was that Commissioner Hassenstab?
Yes.
Okay. Emily, can we please get a roll call vote on the approval of the meeting agenda, please?
Yes, Commissioner Cundy.
Aye.
Commissioner Everson.
Aye.
Commissioner Nemo.
Aye.
Commissioner Hassenstab.
Aye.
Commissioner Pollock.
Aye.
Commissioner Longquist.
Aye.
Commissioner Woodmeyer. Dara, I think we might have lost you.
I'm having technical difficulties. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. We can hear you now.
Okay.
Thank you. And Chair Schilling.
Aye. Thank you, Emily. We now move to the approval of the meeting minutes from the November 9th, 2021 Heritage Preservation Commission meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Lundquist, thank you for that. And do I have a second? Was that Commissioner Nemo? Okay, very good. Emily, could we get a roll call vote on the approval of the November 9th, 2021 meeting minutes as submitted?
Yes, Commissioner Cundy.
Aye.
Commissioner Everson.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Nemo.
Aye.
Commissioner Hassenstab,
Aye.
Commissioner Pollock,
Aye.
Commissioner Longquist,
Aye.
Commissioner Woodmoyer,
Aye.
Chair Schilling.
Aye. Thank you, Emily. Great. That brings us to the reports and recommendations section of our agenda this evening. We are going to take a look at the plans of treatments for two of our heritage resources, the Cahill School, as well as the Grange Hall. And let's see. Did everyone have a chance to look over them? I'm happy to read them out loud if we want to do it that way, or if we want to just jump into comments. Emily, do you have some input here?
I can also pull them up on the screen if that's helpful, or
That is helpful. Let's do
all
that.
right. Okay.
Thank
Yes. Which one would you guys like to start with?
Let's start with the Cahill School is listed first on our document.
Okay. All right, so let me share here. All right, so you should see it now. Oh, and Robert has joined us.
So Emily, I see the web page for the Cahill School, but the PDF for the,
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Perfect.
All right, Robert, it looks like you might be trying to talk or say something. You're not muted, but we're having some issues hearing you.
Commissioners, if you want to just go ahead and start if you have a comment. I can't see that you're raising your hand necessarily, so feel free to just begin. Oh, there we go.
Okay, I changed Robert to something to a presenter. Let's see if that helps him.
Shilling, sorry, I will just share that, it's great to look at them in tandem. They're obviously very similar. I didn't compare, if not word for word, right, aside from the specific features. The piece that jumps out at me, which I think is interesting because of our prior conversation about potential relocation, is the phrase preservation in place. And I really valued that previous conversation because I was able to understand potential benefits of moving them, whereas I was originally adhering just to that phrase. But I would love to hear other comments. That's something that just jumps out at me as a priority. And maybe Robert can clarify that it doesn't mean in its place, which is not original. But that's just a phrase I would love to tease out a little bit in this discussion.
Commissioner Lundquist, I had a similar reading of that, but I think I also thought back to the conversation we had about moving them and things like the basements that were added when they were located to Tupper Park. So, I mean, I think maybe that's what it's referring to, the additions that may have been put on, like those more modern basements, things that we discussed with a potential move, like possibly more handicapped accessibility, those sort of features, because it does call out that there were changes made in both 1935 as well as in the 1970s with its relocation to Tupa Park. So I feel like those are sort of there as caveats for those moves and enable us to make changes in the future if we do move them. I'm sort of interested in hearing from historic consultant Ogle. I mean, I do read here that it's both inside and outside. And I wanted to clarify that and make sure I'm reading that correctly. And what the protocol is for, we're pretty familiar because of our work with the country club district on what happens when there's an exterior change. But I'd like to talk about the interior changes and how that's applicable against the plan of treatment. Is Robert there? Did anyone have input on that question? Or any other questions?
I had a related question while we wait, I guess, for Robert to hopefully connect. Which, you know, is in the first paragraph here, which talks about the most important architectural features to be preserved are, and I'm skipping down to limestone foundation. And I guess I would want to know, you know, if the foundation that we see there now is original, or if that was any limestone foundation, right, to sort of mimic what was there at the time. I guess that would be something to take into consideration with the logistics of potentially having to move them in the future, and what that would mean in terms of, you know, physically building them a new foundation to be placed upon, or whether you would have to, what if this dictates reusing those same materials that are there now, and how that would realistically work.
Mm-hmm. Robert, are you there? And I don't think. Commissioner Pollack, I think that's a really good question. I thought about that too. I thought about that in terms of our conversation that we've had not too long ago about the Wooddale Avenue Bridge and how those original materials are actually decaying and causing a potential safety issue, and whether or not, even though the limestone foundation was an original feature, as we have the conversation about moving going forward, is that something that's important to retain in terms of functionality, or maybe just a cosmetic nod to those original features? I think that's a really good question. I do think we will rely on Robert for some of these answers. Anyone else have questions or comments as you look through these?
If Robert's unable to join us and give his input, we can always move these to next month.
Yeah.
I believe on our work plan we have to do 4 for the year, so we have some time, but
Yep.
If you guys want to get Robert's input, it looks like he's logged in, but we can't hear him for whatever reason.
Yeah. You know, and if we don't have the opportunity to chat with him tonight, gathering these questions I think is valuable. We can take note of these questions, and then when we do have him available, we can get some answers.
Dear Schilling, I apologize. I froze for a minute, but 2 thoughts. One is possibly Robert could respond, you know, in written form, just to sort of expedite, because it sounds like our questions are quite straightforward. Secondly, I might just ask Emily, it's probably an obvious answer, but the second item about the property being maintained, and Annie, perhaps you know because of your city work there as well, are there concerns about the city's ability or history of maintaining the homes, or is that paragraph being handled, you know, appropriately?
From my past experience, the city has done a great job maintaining these resources. My involvement within these buildings previously, I was actually an employee of the Historical Society, and we were doing interpretive programming. But anytime there was an issue, the door was catching, or there was a gap in the window and it was cold, we could call the city and the city would immediately respond with maintenance work. Okay. I will say that I do have some level of concern currently, just because I know that the amount of programming that's happening by the Historical Society and currently, just because of the pandemic, is not a lot. So I worry that there's not a lot of eyes on the shape of the buildings internally. I don't know that the city has necessarily a schedule that they just keep watch. I think, for many years it was dependent on the programming that was happening and people coming in and out of those buildings on a pretty regular basis. So I do know that they have been in there. So my hope is that if there is any need for maintenance, it's been addressed. Does that answer your question at all, Commissioner Lundquist?
Thank you. Thank you.
I haven't heard of any concern with the maintenance. The park maintenance department handles that. So I can reach out and see if there's any or concern or if there's a schedule. If there is, I'm not aware of one.
I mean, anecdotally, Emily, I recently drove past and I saw city maintenance shoveling the front walks. I mean, I know that I've never seen any issue.
Mm-hmm.
First grader was just there 2 weeks ago, so there is programming going on.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, good. That's excellent. I did think I saw, it looks like Robert is coming. Oh, he's getting there. He can hear us. Emily, do you know, you might be able to tell me this, for changes inside, I mean, I know that a couple years ago, I messaged you with concern that there had been some alterations going on. Does that fall under the purview of these plans of treatment? Emily?
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I don't see that it would, the way that I read it. I see that the 1-story, the wall height, the roof shape, materials and things like that.
I see.
It talks about floor plan. Well, it does say interior finishes, so you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I wonder if that needs to come in front of this commission if there's plans for alterations internally.
Mm-hmm.
With
I
cosmetic.
don't know if it's maintenance, like if it's painting the same color, if that's, just considered routine maintenance and they can do that as needed. If they're changing anything, potentially, yes.
Okay.
I would defer to Robert though, because I know this has come up. I'm sure this has come up over the years and how they've handled different projects that have taken place inside.
Yeah.
Should we flip forward to the Grange Hall plan, which is similar while we're waiting for Robert? That way we've checked both off.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. Do you have comments there, Commissioner Lundquist?
No.
Okay. My question there was the clarification of the interior finishes, which Emily just addressed.
Small point, but Minnehaha is misspelled at the top. There's no E.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Thank you. I'll get that fixed.
It was interesting to me reading this, that it calls out it being a 1-story, excluding the basement, which was added. There is like a small balcony in there. I guess that doesn't count as a story, but there are stairs that go up to it. There's sort of a small second level.
Emily, it may be worth just asking, what is the sort of chain of command for any potential interior finish changes? just to be sure that there's, systems in place that it runs through you, or I'm sure, things wouldn't be painted purple, but it might be interesting as long as we're taking the time to look at this to see what the procedure is.
Well, Commissioner Lundquist, it's not, that exact thing did happen a few years ago, where it went from just regular white paint to like green, bright green paint. And that was a concern to me. I brought it to Emily, but I wasn't really sure at the time if that fell under the plan of treatment. But now, taking a close look, it feels like it does. But I do think we should get clarification on that. Emily, would it be a case where if someone wanted to, if an organization like the Grange organization that had been meeting in that Grange hall wanted to make a cosmetic change, they would need to contact you at the city in order for us to review that? Is that the chain of command?
Yes, if it would need a COA, then it would be through me, similar to how other certificates of appropriateness are processed.
Okay. Okay, and we'll need, we should think about that and make sure that organizations that are using the building on a regular basis understand that. And then it's not a function of the exterior, but it is also the interior.
Yes. I will. I'm taking notes here, so I'll touch base with Robert after this meeting as well. Luckily, they're also videoed, so
Yes.
you can always send it to Robert if he missed any of this.
Perfect.
So I'll touch base with him and we can put this on the next agenda. And I'll ask Robert to write something up answering some of the questions we had tonight.
Perfect. Are there Commissioner Lundquist, did I see you have another comment or question?
Sorry, you saw a thumbs up. I think we're ready to move on. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Can I hop in with a
Anybody
question?
else have a question?
Can I hop in with a question, Chair Schilling?
Yes, please.
So my, I guess, question relates to exterior maintenance and plans for routine maintenance, repairs, and improvements to Frank Tupa Park. We all know that the Perkins across the street will in short order be demolished and turned into a multi-story apartment complex with retail on the bottom and a very different use. And we all know the toll that construction takes on adjacent buildings and parking lots in terms of just dust, grime, debris, and I guess I wonder what the city's plan is to minimize the impact of that to the historic structures and to clean them afterwards. Hopefully that has been addressed as part of, plans with the developer, but, we should make sure that, the development across the street isn't impacting maintenance, lawn mowing, accessibility to these structures, as well as, just increasing the wear and tear on them as part of the construction that's going to happen across the street.
Mr. Pellick, I think that's an excellent point. And definitely something that should be addressed.
I can talk to the community development director and get back to you guys on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, anyone else have a question, concern? Okay. I think we raised some really good and interesting questions. We will look forward to hearing Consultant Vogel's answers to some of these questions. And we'll take another look. Emily, we'll hear back from him and she'll send out information to us. And then we can discuss this again if need be at our next meeting. With that, we move to the chair and member comments. Does anyone have any comments around our 2022 work plan?
Chair Schilling, I'm wondering if Emily can give us an update on the escrow conversation that's been going on with the city.
Yes. So there is, working on drafting. We're working with the city attorney. So we're still in the drafting stage to kind of get through kind of the outline. So we're mimicking it off of, or the draft will be mimicked off of the new home policy. And so we're looking at escrow items and how money can be used and how it can't be used in situations. And so we're still working on it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Commissioner Nemo.
I just wanted to jump in with some just thoughts on our Heritage Preservation Award. Just thinking that next month is, I guess, the March meeting. We should really start. I guess, Emily, can you walk us through the process of that? So we
So in years
nominate
past,
in April.
we've nominated, let's see. Yes. So we ask for nominations and we bring it back so that we bring it back to our April meeting and can take action on it.
Right. So I guess when do we start notifying the public of, we kind of get a call for submissions, I guess, is what.
Let's see. I've been working with the communications department on that. I had to have to look to see when we sent it out last year. Let's see here. I can do that and see when they generally put out, I believe it was a press release in the past.
Okay.
They've done, I think, some social media posts as well at that point. We have our communications person, Dan, he works with us or our commissions exclusively. So I'll talk with him and see what's best as far as getting the word out there. And then we'll get the form live on the city's website.
Okay.
So the form, the nomination form will be included in that information that goes out.
Great. And then I would really just, I guess, encourage you all to think about some things in our city that we want to discuss, because I think in the past, I know some commissioners have gathered some great information on potential preservation awards. So that is kind of the start thinking about that, because yes, it's February, but next month we really should have some good ideas. So.
And can I ask a question? I think in the past we have made that award to assets that have been preserved, right? Like home, like very specific things, but you could also nominate an organization.
Yeah,
correct?
I guess a couple years ago we nominated the small area plan of 44th and France. So it was more the group members of that group. So yeah, I mean, it is interesting to look at kind of past winners and just see kind of, that's, I don't know, kind of the distribution of them to see, are we focusing too heavy on one area or not? But I think really if, I think there's compelling arguments for groups of people, but I think it's the heritage preservation. So if there's a little bit of kind of building behind it, I think that maybe has a little more weight to it, but happy to engage. I guess, Emily, what is, I know there's some official language, but I feel like we can be a little bit flexible on that.
Yes, I can pull up the language here.
Well, Emily's pulling that up. I did find a previous press release and it looked like award nominations were due in the past on the 1st of April. And so the nomination form can go live some standard before that.
Thanks, Jane.
Okay. Okay, are you guys seeing the Chrome side of my computer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the past, there has, like Sarah had noted, the commission did give the 44th and France Small Area Plan the award. That one was a little tricky just because it was a group of members, and so yeah, but it was good. I think they appreciated it, the work members or the working group. But I know we like to give a plaque and things too, so we still did that. I'm not sure. We might have it still. Not sure anyone wanted to take it, but we definitely can, it does say Jane worked on the language last year, an individual, family, company, organization. So there is a little bit of flexibility there. But a lot of times it is a little bit helpful to have it tied around some sort of a project.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I guess if we just maybe think of some ideas and task you guys to think of some, I have a couple ones that I've been kicking around too. Then maybe can we add that as an agenda item for next month?
Yes, sorry, what was you just want the preservation award discussion?
Yeah.
Some possible nominations.
Yes.
Yeah, and Emily, if I could ask if there's a roster of previous nominations and previous winners that's easily accessible, I think that'd be wonderful if you'd send that out in notes.
Yeah, I can send that out now. That's on the city's website here. So I'll send that to you. Or I guess it's on my screen too, but
Awesome,
I
thank
will
you.
send that. I'm gonna stop sharing my
Is that
screen.
nominations and winners? I want to be inspired for more nominations. I'm looking to deliver Sarah the most nominations that she's ever fielded.
Well, typically, I mean, we've had a couple people in the past kind of nominate projects, but I feel like 50% of the time it comes from this group.
I think the last couple years we've had some nominations from a community member, but yes, we also have gotten a good amount of nominations from commissioners.
Emily, that prompts me. There was a somewhat surprising one a few years ago. It was perhaps a senior living center on York Road and something. Do you think you could still access that?
The nomination itself?
Yeah.
Yes, we keep the nominations each year, so I do have past nominations for forms and such.
To Mark's point, it may be worth revisiting those.
Yes, I can see, I can get those gathered. Generally we so maybe after discussion next month with the commission, if there is interest in reaching out to those properties, we could ask commissioners to help with that. Because generally we like the property owners to be aware and then involved in the nomination process too.
Absolutely. And I'd be happy to help do that if there's interest.
Okay. Yeah, I can take a look. I know I think that one was that last year even? Might have been the year before, the last couple
it
years.
was last.
Okay.
It might have been 2 years ago. I remember that one too.
Over by the hospital, I
Yep.
believe it was.
Okay, anything else? Any more comments, questions about our work plan? Any of our agenda items there? Okay. Any comments from any of the commissioners not about the work plan? That's an unrelated topic.
Chair
Go
Schilling,
ahead, Commissioner. Go ahead.
Two unrelated. One is I was put in touch with the woman who owns the Convention Grill property in the context of scaring up some information about the Thorpe brothers. She used to be married into that family. In any case, I referenced our group's work with outreach to the properties that are eligible for Heritage Landmark nomination, told her her property is one. She was interested in getting information, and I just think that's worth noting. I passed it to Emily and Robert, and I know they'll follow up at some point, but I just thought the group might find that interesting. She didn't sound likely to want to pursue it, given the restrictions it puts. But I, applauded her desire to want to know. Interestingly, she sounded as if she had been somewhat in the dark in receiving information during the small area plan about that property. It may have gone to the restaurant operator. Anyway, that's just of note for our group. Secondly, I had a useful exchange with Emily just to share with our group, asking her about the pace of construction on 4633 Arden, a renovation that we approved also by Great Neighborhood Homes, that's doing the property we've talked so much about on Drexel. I've heard from many neighbors questions, it seems they're not doing anything. They ripped the brick off, no one's ever there. So my question to Emily was just to clarify, what builders can do. Are they allowed to let properties sit idle? It is open, not egregiously, but to the elements. And the information for us to know that per state statute, permits last for 180 days. If they're idle for 180 days, they expire. I think the builder must know that. There's been slow work. I don't know the reasons nor care to know the reasons for that, but I just think it's important for this group, which is in charge of, preserving and keeping an eye on these contributing resources, that's a concern that's simmering in the neighborhood. So I'm just sharing that information.
I can reach out to the building department too and just have them go check it out and see, what is going on. I know that they have been in contact with the contractor. I've been in contact with the contractor just with questions on the brick removal and things. So they're aware of anything, they have to replace the brick with a similar material that has to be submitted to me. And then if I feel like it's not similar, then it would come back to you. So I can have the building department look
Did
back
they
too.
tell us that they were replacing the brick, Emily?
They did not. It was something that they found during with the start of the demolition of the back of the house, is what I understand.
Okay.
So I would echo what Jane had to say. And the other thing that I would add, and some questions that I had for you, Emily, that I think might be beneficial to the group, particularly on a night when we don't have any COAs to approve, so as to sort of be agnostic of any one particular request that's in front of us. So I share the concerns about the brick, and it's not surprising that it's the same developer. And then I'd also point out, and I don't know if any other members of the group are aware of this because I can't exactly remember the last time we talked, but I noted that that additional walls, exterior walls, were being taken down on 4630 Drexel. And I went in and looked at the calculation, because the permit that gets applied for, which actually has like the final, whatever statement of fact from the perspective of the developer, from my understanding, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, can be different than what they presented to us. And so I have some questions about how we tie that up. But I noted when I went in that, number one, the calculations had changed for existing walls. So they said that something was 8 by 10 in their submission to us. And then all of a sudden it was 10 by 15 in terms of the calculation that was submitted to the city. But then also certain walls that they had highlighted as walls that they were going to keep were walls that had been removed. And I know, Emily, that I got your follow up on that they said, again, that they found those walls to be unsafe, but they didn't contact anyone about that prior to removing them. I'd also point out that one of the walls that they said they were going to originally keep, but then said was unsafe, was a wall that's wholly been replaced. Like it would have been in the middle of a room based on their plans. So that it was ever a wall that they claimed they were going to keep doesn't make sense to me. And so I continue to have concerns and wonder what we'll see next from this developer. My sense is that they've figured out that there's a disconnect between what goes on in these meetings and what that a COA is literally like a golden ticket, and then they can go and do whatever they want to with respect to their submission to the city, and then beyond that go and do whatever they want when they are actually on site. And so one of my questions is, what limitations are there, if any, on the conditions that we put on a COA? So instead of depending on someone to do the right thing, can we say that your submission to the city needs to match what you've submitted to this group? And if you change which walls, or what the calculation is, or what your floor plan is, or any of your finishes, and you intend to submit that to the city, you have to come back to us first. Like, is that a valid condition, understanding that they could go appeal it? Is there a limit to what we can say?
I would have to check with the city attorney on the language of that and what we're allowed to condition and what we're not.
Okay. Because to me,
So that's not something I can answer on the fly here tonight.
okay, because to me it seems pointless. I was really disheartened by it because they can come and say whatever they want to us, and then they can go and submit something completely different, and it relies entirely on you being able to spot those differences in the context of all of your other work. And I don't think that's reasonable. I think if the goal is to protect heritage resources and have this commission approve the work that is done on them, then what is presented to us is only what should be allowed to be presented to the city. And so my plan, just so that people are aware, is that that's a condition that I'm gonna put on everything. And if everyone, until someone tells us that that's illegal, then we can have those conversations at that time. But there isn't going to be a COA that I vote for personally that doesn't have that condition on there, particularly this developer, because it's just not a coincidence that this developer is like, oh, you caught us with this brick off. Well, it was unsafe or over deteriorated, while nobody went and looked and confirmed that was the case. Or, oh, these walls are unsafe, while no one went and was able to confirm that that's the case. I flat out don't believe it. Jane used the word pace to describe their effort. Pace would require movement, and that doesn't exist at all on either of these projects. I'm greatly concerned about both of those buildings, but we just can't allow it to happen further, because meanwhile they have other projects in the city that are moving as steadily as anything else. 54th and Wooddale is moving. We just saw they tore down a house on Morningside that they are moving steadily on. They're not doing right by these homes in this neighborhood, and this commission should not allow that.
So to follow up a little bit with that too, I've been in discussion with the building official and the contractor, and in talking with the building official and our city attorney too, I'm trying to figure out ways that's helpful to the Heritage Preservation Commission to get the information that you guys need to make an informed decision. Initially, I know in some instances, sometimes not the plans aren't 100% fully developed at the time where a certificate of appropriateness is applied for. One thing that I talked with Dave Fisher about, who's the city, the building official, is being involved in the heritage review process in the terms of reviewing the applications and potentially submitting some sort of a memo to the Heritage Preservation Commission with helpful information, maybe pointing things out or addressing concerns. To my understanding, and I'm going off of what I've been being told, that a lot of times walls aren't opened up in certain instances and things are found during construction. And maybe some of the architects want to touch on that too, but I have been brainstorming with the building official on what information might be more helpful up front, what we can ask for, and having him be involved in the process earlier on.
I think that's fair. I think that what I would say is that there should be a requirement that they come back and that someone actually goes to validate that what they're saying is correct. Because hypothetically, what I could go and do, right, is I could say, I'm going to save these 50% of walls, actually knowing full well that those are the walls that can't be saved. And then I go knock down the walls that could have been saved. And then I say, oh, but these walls that I thought I was going to save are no longer valid. So now 100% of the walls have been demolished because I strategically chose what I was going to do and not do. So I am sure that I've come across as unreasonable at times with regard to these properties. I'm really not trying to come from a place of unreasonableness, but it's it there are ways to exploit this system the way it's currently configured, and those means are being exploited. And so if you have something that you found, then you should be able to call X, Y, or Z person and have them come validate it. And if it's validated and then it comes back to us that yes, they think they found something different than what they expected, city building official went out there and looked at it. They consulted with Emily and Robert, and this decision was made so that construction would continue. That's different than 2 months later. Now, for example, with those wall calculations, they've given you a letter of explanation and wall calculations that just don't matter because they're already gone and nothing can be done. So I just think that we need to find the ways that people are exploiting the system and then find ways to make it so they can't do that anymore.
I'll add, I like both approaches. Commissioner Cundy, thank you for staying on top of this. Honestly, I wouldn't approve a single plan that this developer brings forward. He's just been unscrupulous, and at this point, he's, just kind of telling it to the neighborhood. But I think your approach is a more professional one, and that condition is something that I think is reasonable. I'd be curious if, Sarah, for example, having worked on projects, does that seem too onerous? Emily, I also like your approach because I think we all along want to make this something that's preservation shouldn't be a heavy lift, and usually it's not. Unfortunately, these cases are making it such, but having the building official involved earlier on would have flagged that this developer all along had intended it as a tear down. As he listed it as new construction when he put it for sale, he changed the built date. So it clearly he was banking on getting around our stop gate. But looking at those interior plans would have really expedited us, number one, seeing it for what it was. And number two, a lot of the delay was when he realized he had to play by the rules, he had to do whole new trusses. So Emily, I like your approach as well.
Can I just ask a question? Emily, and this gets to something that Bob was talking about, and I assume is true, but it would be great to confirm it. When we approve a COA, they go in and start looking at the wall and decide for whatever reason there's deterioration and they have to end up demolishing it. Before they do that, I mean, they are calling the building department and having someone come verify that what they're claiming is true. And like, for instance, this other house on Arden, the building department did confirm that the bricks needed to be removed before they were removed, correct? Or is this, no?
No.
They were not removed, or they were not notified. The building department isn't notified prior to that, or wasn't notified prior to that.
What's the
Which is-
repercussion?
So that was,
There are no repercussions because it's already gone. The brick's already off. It was piled in the yard, right? The walls are already gone. So that's why I'm proposing, and I mean this, every COA, if they propose a change or if the building permits are based on different plans, then my proposal is that COA is invalid unless the plans as submitted on the evening that they come to us are as submitted to the city. That any changes to what is they say they're going to keep either structure or surface. I think we have to do this until we get further clarification from the city, because all of these things just came to us, like the brick on Arden, right? I think it was,
Let
I
me
can't
ask
remember
another
whether it was Mark
question,
or
Bob.
Jane told me to drive by and it was all gone. And I remember
Not to cut you off, Bob, but we've issued a COA. We didn't approve removal of the brick.
Right.
So can we reconsider the COA that was previously issued?
I talked with Robert about this one, and with this one, it was that it would need to be replaced with similar material, and that the building will, or the builder contractor will submit their proposed material to me. And then at that point, if I feel it's not similar, then it would go back to the HPC.
Which is a fine reaction, but if we look at the plan of treatment for Country Club, it talks about rehabilitation of existing heritage materials and so on. So that's, I understand that's the best we can do in this situation, but that's not honing true to our plan of treatment, which does talk about preserving materials.
It does, but in specific instances, there is building materials that can be replaced without a certificate of appropriateness as well. So it is an unclear, it's not unclear. I checked with Robert on this one when this came to my attention, and that's what we discussed, is kind of that plan or that track that they would need to submit the building materials to us or to me, and then ultimately to the Heritage Preservation Commission if it's different.
Because Emily, the plan of treatment allows for, let's say somebody does have a brick house in Country Club. If they want to paint the brick, they can paint the brick without requesting a COA. So that's, I mean, so I guess, yes, I feel like it's a little, I don't know, a little shady for this brick to come down and for us to not have known about it. But kind of at the end of the day, and this gets back to the kind of replication and versus restoration aspect of kind of what we're tasked to look at. I think, yes, I think that this developer will have a little red flag of every COA he comes to the commission with. But I also feel like it's maybe just on the education side and early on to say, okay, let's say if we do have this kind of final check and balance, then when builders or architects come to Emily early on to say that this really is going to be 3 steps to have somebody get approval with final plans, you're investing a lot of money into these plans as a homeowner. You're paying your architect, you know, oftentimes $100,000 to develop these drawings to the point of getting construction going. And so to ask a homeowner to invest in that is a lot to ask. But I feel like that's why we have the sketch plan review. And that kind of is the green light to proceed with kind of investing in this design. And then if the COA approval is on, you know, 75% or 50% of the drawings, then that's another green light. And yes, there could be a final check and balance, but I feel like the weight of that COA does need to happen before there is a large investment on the homeowner's part.
Can I ask a question too? If there hadn't been any other work done on this house and these homeowners simply wanted to remove the brick, would that require a COA? Remove and replacing the brick?
No. I would confirm with Robert when I've gotten that question on certain projects and what they're removing, but no, if they're replacing it with like brick, then they would not need to go through the COA process.
So same for like siding, if they're removing original wood siding and they're replacing it with aluminum siding, doesn't need to get a COA.
With it talks about building materials, the plan of treatment does, but if it was, I don't know about aluminum siding, but if they were replacing it with other wood siding or new wood siding, then no, it would not.
Okay.
You know,
but
I did.
You're replacing brick with wood siding, then it perhaps would, because that's kind of changing the general character and streetscape. So
yes.
It's tricky.
Mm-hmm.
So then, Emily, to what you told them, right? Then that would be consistent with what we've done. If they want to replace it with like brick, don't need to come back to us. If they're thinking they're going to put on some nice modern white wood siding of some sort, they would need to come in for a COA.
Yes, they would need to come back to the Heritage Preservation Commission for a revision. If it's, so from what I understand, they say that they're replacing it with a similar material. Like I said, I've asked that they submit it to me and then I'll review it with Robert. If there's any question whether or not it's not a like product or like material, then it would come back to the Heritage Preservation Commission, and the contractor is aware of that.
Oh,
It is also bring up a point, like certain, with more projects that we review and things that come up, it does help with certain questions that we know to ask in review of some of these projects. If there is, they're rehabbing brick, how are they going to do that? Have they looked into it at all? If they're going to be, removing walls, are there certain questions that with things that have come up that I think we can review certificate of appropriateness through those lenses or with those lenses as we move forward.
I agree, and I think this has been a helpful clarifying and educating discussion for us. And just to be clear, I didn't bring up removal of the brick in the home as the issue per se. It's more that the brick was torn off and the house is sitting with empty siding, open joists, and zero progress. That's where the rub is, and that feels like an intentional state of disrepair. But I think this is a very good conversation to have, and let's keep having it.
And I'll ask the building department too. I know they have been in contact with the super on that site. And so I'll ask them, the building official, to see if he can check back on that one.
I do feel like the work of this commission, now that we're seeing another property where where our red flags are going up, I think it's comes back to this element of where is the recourse for the developer. I think we need to look at it, both work on the front end, like Emily's approach, bringing in the building department on the front end as the plans are developed, but also like Commissioner Cundy has come up now with two possible solutions, with a bond required and or something that might trigger a reevaluation of a COA once things have changed. So I think that we should, as a commission, we should continue to look at both sides of the COA. I think we've relied a lot on this idea that our process that is in place has been working, and it has, possibly until this point. We're now faced with the second situation where we sort of identified the pitfalls, and the pitfalls are being repeated. So I think we should continue to think about how to close how to close the holes in the dam on both the planning side as well as once the COA has been issued, where the recourse lies.
Well said, Chair Schilling, and with a note that the construction has just begun on 4600 Browndale, which was, if we remember, a large and contentious tried to tear down, and ultimately some plans were approved with a new architect. In any case, so I would thank in advance Commissioner Hasselstub if he can be eyes on that project. And if Emily, if you can be the squeaky wheel within the planning department to just help us make sure things go correctly. And I have no reason not to believe that they should, but I think we all know it's easier to address on the front end, and we don't want to start a precedent of sloppy work.
I also want to take a second to thank those of you that do have your eyes on these situations continuously. So thank you. I know that it's a matter of proximity, but it's also it's attention I'm very grateful for. So thank you for keeping your foot on the gas there. Okay. Anything else? Any other commissioner comments, questions? I want to send another thank you to Commissioner Woodmeyer. So is this your last meeting? tonight?
This is my last meeting. Yep. So you guys, thank you for everything. Oh my gosh, what a great group. I'm so grateful.
I think I'm freezing now.
You're back, Annie.
I think I'm freezing too, but thank you, Deb.
Sarah, thank you for you're always you're always present, and um it's been a pleasure to work with you over the last 3 years. Thank you.
I'm so grateful. You guys are such a knowledgeable group. I've learned so stinking much. So thank you for everything. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else before we move to staff comments?
Sure, Shalene, I guess I just have one more question for Emily in the context
Yeah.
of the discussions with the city attorney about conditions in the COA, because I had a discussion, and I'm forgetting who it was with at the city, about 4630, and they shared what Jane had shared earlier, which was that, you know, the building permit is active for 180 days unless there's work done, but that the definition of work could be, you know, a hammer and a nail, and then you've done work, right, or taken something down. So one of my questions is not only what are the conditions that we can place on a COA in terms of to close the loop on the design or the plan for the property as submitted to us versus what goes to the city shortly thereafter, but are there ways that we can structure our COA so that it's not just the necessary piece to get your permit and then essentially it's toss away, but that there are conditions for having an active COA so that if a property gets to disrepair and we have to activate that escrow fee, that you're all of a sudden no longer allowed to do work, right, until certain issues are resolved. Like, is there a way that the COA can live sort of longer term in parallel with a building permit on properties that are historic, so that certain conditions have to be met throughout the
Well, it
execution?
does. I mean, I do final inspections once the projects are completed. So the COA is continued throughout the process. You know, I take the elevations out to projects that are finished and verify that they meet certain conditions. Like we had one recently, there was, you know, putting up what was the latest one? There was like decoration or breaking up that wall on a garage. So I went back there, and once the garage was completed, took pictures of all elevations, uploaded those in the building permit, and closed it out. I did a final heritage inspection at that point. So it is carried through. So to kind of clarify what Jane touched on is I reached out to the building department with the question that was brought up with permits and continuing work with permits. So from what I've been told, permits are good for 180 days. Once issued per the building code, those days get extended another 180 days after an inspection has been completed. So if a permit sits for more than 180 days and no inspections take place, then it would be expired. So just to clarify that too, it's on inspections. So yes, if there was a question, and in the past this has been the case where there is a question on whether or not the COA is being followed, we have issued stop work orders with the building department. And so all work stops on all the projects until things are clarified and figured out. So we did that on a project on Browndale a couple years ago, and we have not done that with either of these projects. So there is some questions on whether or not the city is holding up projects or slowing things down in this case, and that's not. We have been working with the contractor. I met with them multiple times to kind of clarify what's going on site, getting him the information that I needed or that the building department needed to see. So we were working with them. We have been working with them, and I know trying to get the information that we ask for can sometimes be difficult too. But we did not put stop work orders on any of these, but we have done that in the past.
Well, they stopped work all on their own. Has the owner been involved in any of these conversations?
I have not contacted the owner. No, I don't have their contact. All the contact is done through the who is on the permit.
So wait, the homeowner is not at all attached to any of the permit for this property?
Contractors generally pull permits for the projects. So that generally they're the point of contact for the building department and for any questions with a building permit.
All right, thanks.
I think I lost you all for a moment. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, we'll move to the staff comment section with Emily. Emily, why don't you we can go ahead with staff comments.
Yeah, I don't really have anything in addition to what we've touched on so far, but I do want to remind everyone again that if there is any questions in between meetings or anything comes up, please feel free to reach out to me. We can set up a meeting or a call, or if there's questions that need to get answered, I'm happy to do that. I know sometimes it's hard meeting once a month, but please reach out if you have any questions.
Emily, I just want to say that you're always so on top of it and answer all of our questions very calmly and intelligently. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, the only thing we have left is a motion for adjournment. Do I have anyone willing to give us a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Okay. I'm gonna take Commissioner Pollock as the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Nemo. Emily, could we please get a roll call vote on the motion of adjournment?
Commissioner Cundy,
Hi.
Commissioner Everson,
Hi.
Commissioner Nemo,
Aye.
Commissioner Hassenstadt,
Aye.
Commissioner Pollock,
Aye.
Commissioner Longquist,
Aye.
Commissioner Woodmeyer,
Hi.
and Chair Schilling.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Commissioner
Before we
Woodward,
go,
it's you.
before we go, everyone, I want to recognize Commissioner Pollock's chairs as the stars of this discussion, besides the lively discussion. I've been admiring those the entire meeting, so well done on the womb chair. I don't know what the other one is, but I definitely recognize a Sarah hand there. So
It's a knockoff, but thank you.
oh no! Okay, all right. I was just gonna say we could talk nerdy old smelly 70s chairs sometime.